So welcome everyone. My name is Adelda van der Walt. I am at Solarify. We run a small consulting company and work with RSSE Africa, which was started by Peter van Houston and Eugene de Bester from South Africa. And we've been trying to get this community off the ground for quite some time. So I'm going to ask Peter van Houston to just say a few words about what he has in mind with RSSE Africa and what you can expect to see from it.
Yeah, thanks, Adelda. So RSEE Africa actually came out of a meeting that happened in Uganda in 2017, where the African Society for Bioinformatics and Computational Biology had a meeting at Entebbe at UVRI. And ASBCB then kind of launched the different working groups. And one of the things that we raised, myself and also some colleagues, and then Eugene de Bester, who was with us then, is now at the ACE lab at CHBC, was that we have people working in the academic space whose main output is not papers or students, because the typical academic faculty member is evaluated on the students they supervise and the papers that they produce, basically research. Okay, then we have people who are producing software. So that software can be specialized and can often start as like lab projects. Many students produce software as part of their PhD, but then it can go beyond lab projects. So I spend probably a good at least 10% of my time working on a project called Galaxy and contributing to a global open source project and community, either training materials and or software itself, or it can actually be the infrastructure that runs the software. So quite a few universities like UWC and elsewhere have high performance computing facilities, and that involves kind of configuring kind of typically Linux computers to run scientific software. And scientific software is, somebody once described it to me as the little speck of phytoplankton in the ocean of computing. It really is, as far as possible, it draws on general computing, but it then becomes specialized, and it has its own installation and management challenges that we don't tend to find in general computing. So that's what I call research software engineers for making the software, and research system engineers making the system. So then we decided to create this website or this group, RSSE Africa, which has a website, which is a forum. And then, as Adelda said, it didn't really take off from there. It was basically just Eugene and myself, and then Eugene moved to the CHBC, where he is involved in some HPC training, but it really has been myself. And then Kim showed up and was like, "Hey, I'm doing this at Stellenbosch," Kim Martin. And then Adelda had asked me, well, what can she do from Solarify to support the community? And this is where we are. So that's the website. In the chat, it has a forum that is very underutilized, but has been used a little bit in the years. And yeah, that's where RSSE Africa comes from. And I will leave it there.
Great, excellent. Thanks, Peter. So now you know a little bit more about RSSE Africa. We're very unique in Africa to have the double S, because the international movement is research software engineers, but Peter and Eugene had the foresight to formally include systems engineers as well. So in Africa, we are RSSE Africa for software and systems engineers. And we've had some interest from the international communities about that explicit inclusion. So that's great. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our speakers today. Thank you so much, Heidi Seibold, for joining us. Heidi gave a presentation last year at an international R conference, which set a snowball off for RSEs in Africa. And we thought it's only just to invite her to speak today. Yeah. So Heidi, you can do a little introduction to yourself And then after Heidi, we will hear from Kim, who was one of the people who attended Heidi's presentation in middle last year. And Kim will tell us a little bit about what has happened since. So thank you very much, Heidi. Welcome to share your screen and tell us more.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I feel very honored to be here and to like be in the spotlight like this. I'm gonna share my screen now and try to see if I can share my slides with you. Oh no, not this way. There's always this Zoom stuff in the way. Here we go. Can you see my slides now? Is that okay?
Yes, yes.
Excellent. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here. My name is Heidi Seibold. You can find me on Twitter under @HeidiBaya, where I tweet mostly about open science, reproducible research, and the struggles with my work and the fun in my work as well. I'm a member of IGDOR, which is a conglomerate of independent researchers. And I'm going to be self-employed from the summer on. So I'm going to be doing something very similar to what Anela is doing right now, is helping people to make their work open and reproducible. And that also means that my slides and drawings that I have here in the slides are licensed under CC BY license, which means you can reuse them in any way you want, as long as you add my name to it in any way and give me credit somehow. Okay, so what are we talking about today? So I want to talk to you about what actually means research software engineer. And I'm focusing here on the research software engineer part rather than on the systems engineer, because that's what what I know a little bit better. But yeah, I think Peter gave a really good introduction before on the systems part as well. So when people ask you what you're doing and you, for example, answer that you're a research software engineer, then most people will likely not really know what that is. So I want to share with you a little bit about what I personally think that is. And this is not like an all-encompassing definition, but rather something that I came up with when I try to explain what a research software engineer is. So I think it's easiest to explain what a research software engineer is by saying what a research software engineer does. So what does a research software engineer do? One thing is they code, they write computer code, and not only that, they develop a whole software. So what's the difference between the two? Well, if you're already writing analysis scripts, for example, for your data analysis, then I would consider that as part of an RSE work already. But developing code is also something that's definitely something an RSE does. They also consult on how to write software, how to write analysis scripts, help other researchers in producing good software or working with software. They also teach researchers about software. So I saw already that people from software carpentry are here. So I would consider you an RSE as well. And also they support researchers in projects regarding the part of the project that entails software. So let's go into a couple of personas that I come up with who are maybe typical RSEs. So there's the geek. Yeah, she's a PhD student, for example. She writes software as part of her research project and really enjoys that and does it well. She also would like to code more, but her PhD supervisor asks her to like focus on her papers rather than on the software and think about her career. So this is also what Peter mentioned earlier. The struggle of software not being a first-class citizen in science and not being valued as much, for example. Then there's the go-to person in case of problems. I think almost every institute has someone like this. He knows how to solve all kinds of computer problems, enjoys helping others. He's really hired to work on other things, but he's kind enough to help everyone with their software questions. He knows R and Python, and he just is a kind helper for everyone around. Then there's the researcher, and she works in a lab. She needs to write analysis scripts and needs other software skills as well for her research. She learns what she needs, but she focuses really on her lab work. And then there's the reproducibility guru. He just is super excited about how to make research reproducible, which nowadays, since most of the work with the data, at least, is on computers, right? So he needs a lot of software tools in order to really make his work reproducible. And this way he RSE of sorts as well. Then there's a really hardcore software person. She is hired to work on software for a research project. For example, she might write an app to collect data for research. She has an intricate knowledge of the research that's being done, and thus can help in this research project much better than just any general software developer, right? Eventually, she decides to leave academia because companies seem to value her skills much more than universities. At least she has more career chances than in academia. And here I want to also note that there's not only academic RSEs, but this is what I'm focusing on here today. There's also RSEs in companies as well. And then there's me. I really like research, but what I truly love is thinking about open science and reproducibility. I really enjoy coding in R, and also I get to talk about these topics a lot. So most of my talks are about open science, reproducibility, and research software engineering. And I've not been invited as much to talk about my actual research that I've done. And that's okay. I also just left the classical academic career path actually pretty much a year ago to do the things that I really love, and without having the pressure to always write papers and focus on these things that I'm talking about today instead. So what I want with these personas is that RSEs are really everywhere. You need them for all kinds of research fields. There's almost no research field, or I would say today, there's no research field left that doesn't have software that's the basis for the research, right? If we think about gene analysis, if we think about the data infrastructure that you need for polar expeditions, if we think about digital humanity projects, about medical trials, about social science, we have RSEs in all the fields, and at least we have software in all the fields. And I think the people who work there don't really yet know that they are actually RSEs, and that they should be valued for their both intricate knowledge of the science and the research that they're doing, and also this very good understanding of how to develop software, how to write scripts, and so on. So this is really a superpower, being somewhere in between these worlds of software and research. And I think we need to value these people so much more than they are valued today. So my question for you is, think about whether you might be an RSE as well. Are you maybe one of these personas, or are you maybe similar to one of these personas? Or are you maybe an RSE of a different kind that I didn't mention before? So what is the struggle that we have mostly in academia? Currently, what we said before is software is not as valued as papers in academia still. although we've been fighting for software becoming a first-class citizen alongside papers for a while now. And the working situation that we have often as RSEs is that you get, considering that you're a software developer, a pretty shitty salary, very little job security, and no career path at all. Because, I mean, this is changing now, at least in the UK and maybe a little bit in Germany and other countries as well. But as long as there is no word for what you are, and there's definitely no clear, you can't like yet become a professor of RSE because you're not writing papers, right? So again, this whole thing around papers is getting in the way. So it's very hard to establish a clear career path for yourself. And on the other hand, with your skills, both in software and in research, you're so important for the research that's being done that the researchers can't really do without RSEs anymore. So these are the two sides that we see at the moment in most countries around the world, I would say. And that's really sad, actually. So we want to change that and get closer to the optimal world and allow RSEs to work on the things that they're passionate about, which is often, I mean, often people get to become RSEs because they're so passionate about writing software and they're so interested in coding that they get so good at that. Besides being just a researcher, they become really good at software engineering. And so we want to have a world in the future where people get to work on what they're passionate about. At least that's what I would hope for the future. So the big question is, how do we get there? How do we change people's minds about research software engineering? How do we get into their heads that this is really important? And I would say one of the answers, at least, is building community. And that's what we're doing here, right? So this is really cool. So how did this community of research of software engineers get started? It first was launched, actually, so the term research software engineer was coined in March 2012 in the UK. And they've done a great job of establishing the term and also providing career paths for RSEs. And I think we'll hear a little bit more about that later in the second talk as well. In Germany, so that's where I come from, we had the initiation in September 2016 at one of the RSE conferences in the UK, and we founded an association in November 2018. And then there's lots of other RSE communities around the world that has been popping up. And of course, there's this community now, which is super exciting. I'm super excited to be part of this first meetup today, and also about the upcoming meetups. It's really cool to see what's going on here. And with this, I would like to thank you all for having me here. And please write your questions in the doc, and we'll have time for questions, I think, after the second talk.
Thank you so much, Heidi. That was a very, very quick overview of what RSEs are and how it started. And I hope that people in the audience got some idea and had that feeling. I heard from one of my colleagues saying, "Oh, I'm an Heidi." So I hope that some of you felt a sense that there are other people like you and that there is already a movement and resources and community and a place where we belong, and people that are fighting a fight for building research software and systems engineers as a career within academia. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Kim to tell us a little bit about her journey, and then we'll have questions afterwards. Please, you're also still welcome to ask questions within the shared Google Doc or in the chat. Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Anelda. So my name is Kim Martin. I'm a postdoc at Stellenbosch University. I, at the start of COVID, made the switch from a biomedical postdoc into a new postdoc doing work in forestry, which is not as weird the change as it looks. But basically, I was wanting to get away from the wet lab and into a more computational role, which I've succeeded in doing. I'm now also a Software Sustainability Institute fellow. The Software Sustainability Institute is the organization that coined the term RSE in 2012. So last year, I was of the opinion that my choices were I could either be a miserable wet lab researcher because I did not belong in a wet lab, or I could be a relatively mediocre coder because in isolation, how am I supposed to develop myself in any particular direction as a good coder, I thought. Then I attended the Use R conference, and I saw Heidi give a talk for the first time. And it's wonderful that this has come full circle, and I'm now talking after Heidi because this was quite the epiphany for me. I suddenly had this realization that I didn't have to choose between two, rather uninspiring options. I could actually inhabit a third sort of intermediary position where my research background and my coding skills actually add some unique value together. Yeah, so warning, this has been quite the slippery slope for me because things have been gathering speed ever since that talk. So with my eyes were open to RSE and what it was, and I realized it sounded like what I like doing, and I could really see the value in it. It sounds like something that I was already mostly doing in my group. So I was already doing coding work. I was already supervising students or training them up, making sure that their work was being done to a certain standard and version controlled and all that kind of thing. And the whole RSE thing sounded like a role that I wanted to pursue. This is something that I wanted to belong within. So I decided, well, in that case, I need to become an RSE. So I joined the RSE Society, the UK-based society. I've started skilling up, focusing more on sort of software development, good practices and things like that. I became a software or carpentries instructor with particular interest in the software carpentries. And then I decided, well, to become an RSE, it's all very well skilling up and, sort of taking advantage of the resources out there. But really to develop myself, I need some form of community. I was feeling a little bit alone and lacking in guidance in my group, sort of apparently the term is embedded RSE, as in an RSE who's sort of in a research group, but they're sort of the only person there who's trying to do who's trying to do RSE type things. And I decided that a community of practice would solve both the loneliness and the guidance issues. But when I started looking around, I couldn't find any obvious RSE-like community at Stellenbosch University. I was aware, that's the point that I reached out to Peter and Elder about RSSE Africa, but I wanted something local. So I decided I should build a community. What does it take? Reach out and meet people. So I started to reach out across Stellenbosch University and identify Stellenbosch University researchers who could code and potentially would want to collaborate across disciplines, because I felt that was a key thing about RSEs, is this potential to cross bridges or build bridges between disciplines and work with researchers in very different fields, bringing those sort of glue skills of software engineering and things like that. So I was looking for proto-RSEs. But in the process of trying to seek or build a community, I realized that there was a demand and a potential for RSE within Stellenbosch University. In addition to the researchers I was finding who could code and wanted to collaborate, the proto-RSEs, I was also finding researchers who needed coding assistance and training. These would have been the clients. And a little bit of an aside here. So when the Software Sustainability Institute coined the term RSE, that was 10 years ago. And in the intervening decade, something has been popping up across, there's apparently like 30 of them now in the UK and some more overseas, is this phenomenon of research software engineering groups. And if you're within Stellenbosch University, you'll be familiar with SAF, the Central Analytical Facilities. Basically, these are groups of RSEs who serve researchers across all faculties of the university that they belong within, doing a variety of different things, which I'll get to. But noticing that there seemed to be this demand and potential in terms of there were proto-RSEs around, I felt that surely the sensible thing would be to start an RSE group. And now, obviously, it's not as simple as a few slides might make it out to seem. But what I have been doing in the months since I attended that conference where I saw Heidi speak, is I've been identifying a core group of what I call affiliated members, who are people who are interested in participating in RSE projects. And I'm exploring different models where that participation can be formalized. I've also been tapping into internal supports and resources within Stellenbosch University. So, for example, IT has been expressing an interest in collaborating closely, and I'm very excited about the potentials of that. There is an organization within the agri-science faculty called the Agroinformatics Initiative, which has been giving some very substantive support to helping me get things started. The library, Stellenbosch University Library, has got some interests in there is alignment in the kind of things that an RSE group would be trying to do, and working together with the library is very natural in some ways. And also the data school in Stellenbosch University, it's similar but different, and there's definitely alignment. And I've been looking for funding and other forms of support across Stellenbosch University. In addition, I've been tapping into external supports and resources. For example, the Software Sustainability Institute, which started the whole RSE movement 10 years ago. I've lost one of my slides. There we go. So I now literally have the T-shirt, thanks to the Software Sustainability Institute, but thanks to Anelda, because she encouraged me to apply for what it was the first round of international fellowships with the SSI. And I was awarded one of the fellowships for my proposal. It actually started out slightly different, but it's now evolved into the pilot project where I intend to connect a number of about 8 to 12 Stellenbosch University researchers with UK-based RSEs in short consulting engagements, where the aim is to improve the Stellenbosch University's researchers' grant applications by incorporating some element of RSE, and that can be at different scales. But I'm quite excited about that, and I'll be putting out formal adverts for participants very soon. So basically, the way I see it, the 4 pillars of RSE at Sun, the Stellenbosch University RSE group, should be the 4 C's: carpentries training, consulting, coding support and engagements, and community building. And I have clear plans with the first 3. I'm still trying to, although ironically, given community building was my first motivation, I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to go about the community building aspect of it. But I'm still talking to people, and the model is still very much evolving. And there's a clear interest from proto RSE type people for some form of cross-faculty community of practice. So in conclusion, look within your environment for people to connect with. Look outside your environment, because there is a wealth of resources and support out there. Thank you for your time and listening to me today. And I would very much welcome any suggestions or other inputs, because the slippery slope has progressed to become a climb at this point, although it's one that I'm undertaking very willingly.